Hey World History students, Tree Hall here. This short video is my attempt at helping you with the Unit 1 project, and it's which turns out to be an essay about life in the trenches in the form of a letter home. This is a super easy essay to write, and I promise you that if you watch this video, you will walk away with a solid plan of attack, and you will easily be able to get a 5-paragraph, 600-word essay out of this. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so let's start with the essay topic. Oh, hang on, back to this. Just a nice picture of a couple dudes sitting with their rat collection, because that was one of the pastimes in the trenches, was rat hunting, because so many were there. So that gives you a little bit of a conditions in the trenches here. Okay, so let's go to the essay topic. Now, what you have to write about, and the topic is, the project is fairly clear that this needs to be a 5-paragraph, might as well be an essay. The way they've got it formatted it really is an essay in disguise of a letter. Imagine you were a soldier during World War I. You may be a soldier for the Allied powers or the Central powers, does not matter. Write a 5-paragraph letter home to your family. Your letter must include information about everyday conditions of life for the common infantrymen during the war, a specific battle. Choose from the Gallipoli campaign, the Battle of Verdun, the Somme, the Ardennes, the Marne, Ypres, Chateau Thierry, Belleau Wood, and then you also need to cover technology used in war: tanks, poison gas, machine guns, mortar bombs, etc. Now, what I did when I put some notes in for this is I gave you a little bit more help in that I actually linked Wikipedia articles to not all of these battles, but you could just as easily go from the Wikipedia article on the Battle of the Somme to Verdun or one of the other ones. But I linked, what does it look like? 3 major battles, the Gallipoli campaign, 4 major battles, weapons of World War I, life in the trenches. So this is where I tried to make it as easy as possible for you to get some pretty good information for your essay. And again, super simple essay. So let's start. The first step in writing an essay is to turn the topic into a question with a question mark. So our topic is: imagine you're a soldier during World War I. You may be a soldier for the Allied powers or the Central powers. Write a 5-paragraph letter home to your family. And then, of course, it lists all the things that you have to do. Now, sometimes when you're given an essay topic, it comes in the form of a question. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, what you have to do is you have to really look at that topic and you have to ask yourself, what are they asking me here? What is the question I'm going to be answering? Now, this is important for a couple reasons. One, it clarifies what your entire essay is going to be revolving around. It kind of clarifies the topic. In this particular essay, our question is: what was life for a soldier in World War I like? That's as simple as that. That's what they're asking you to write about. You have to write about what it was like to be in the trenches in World War I. The second reason that it's important to turn the topic into a question with a question mark is because your one sentence answer to that question is going to be the thesis statement in your essay that your entire essay revolves around. So at some point in your intro paragraph home to your parents, you need to say something about what life is like. Life out here at the front is, and then you need to fill in the blank, and you can try to be positive about it. Most people, I'm assuming, will try to be negative because war is generally kind of a negative thing. And then, of course, we also have the conditions of the essay. In this essay, you have to write about everyday conditions of life, a specific battle, and the technology that was used in war. In World War I, it was a real watershed. There was a lot of new technology used in the war that had never been used before, like gas, machine guns, tanks. The machine gun absolutely changed the warfare, and they basically had to come up with new ways to fight, because the old ways, that they used in the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and the Napoleonic Wars, with a bunch of dudes, running out in the fields, that didn't work anymore. Now, going back to the essay. Again, turn the topic into a question. What you're going to be writing about here is what life was like. When you think of it that way, then the things that are underneath the topic, the everyday conditions, the specific battle, those suddenly make sense. Within your essay, you're going to be writing what everyday conditions were like, What was a certain battle, whichever one you choose, what was that like? Did you lose friends? Did you, what were the casualties? What did you see in that battle? And also, what kind of new technology that you've seen used? What was that technology like? What was it like to be running into the face of a machine gun? So that's why you turn the topic into a question with a question mark. The next thing you do after you turn the topic into a question is now you have to organize your essay. Now it says clearly in the topic that your paper should be 5 paragraphs long. Follow standard essay format. Your essay must have an introduction as the first paragraph, 3 paragraphs in the body paper, and 1 concluding paragraph that ties your paper together. Even though this is a letter home, basically because of the way they assigned the topic, because they made you talk about certain things, in reality this is an essay. So let's talk about this for a second. An essay is a stylized piece of literature. For example, if you write a haiku, or an essay, hang on, let me back up a little. An essay is a stylized piece of literature, which means that it has to follow certain rules. It is organized a certain way and it has to follow certain rules. Another example of stylized literature is a poem. A certain type of poem is a haiku. If you write a haiku, which everybody does at some point in elementary school, you have to follow the rules. You have to use 5 syllables. It's a 3-line poem. 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second, and 5 in the third. That is a haiku. You can write any poem you want, but if you don't follow those rules, it's not exactly a haiku. The same thing with an essay. You have to follow certain rules. In an essay, you have 3 parts. You have the intro, where you tell the reader what you're going to tell them. You have the body, where you tell them. And then you have the conclusion, where you tell the reader what you told them. Now let's think about these 3 parts for a second. Telling the reader what you're going to tell them, and then coming back at the end and telling them what you told them are very similar. And so in essays, intro paragraphs, or the intro and the conclusion, tend to be almost exactly the same length because basically they look very similar to themselves. Once you have your intro written out, you're about 80% home for the conclusion, because in the conclusion you're just basically going to be restating that intro. Now, it's probably obvious to you that in an essay, in any essay, your body is the largest part of the essay. Typically in an essay, a body is going to be about 60 to 75% of the entire essay. Why is that? Well, that's because you're telling them. Now, if you're going to write something long, then you're going to have to divide that into paragraphs. I can tell you from somebody who's graded essays for, well, geez, about the last 16 years, a typical 5-paragraph essay is at least 500 words and can be up to 900 words, but I like to use 600 words because it's closer to the 500 and that's pretty standard for an essay. So when you write an essay for me, think of that 600 word, which is actually pretty small if you think about it. A paragraph is usually about 150 words. Words tend to add up pretty quickly. Now, if you have 60 to 75% of 600 words, you're going to have to break it up into several paragraphs because it's going to be one long chunk of writing. A good 5-paragraph essay, single space, is a page and a half. So you don't want to have, if 75% of that, you don't want that to be one big paragraph. So what typically happens in longer essays is we break them into pieces. So when you look at a 5-paragraph essay, which is what you write in a lot of high school courses, you use 1 paragraph from the intro, and remember how the intro is similar to the conclusion? That means another paragraph of the conclusion, which if you subtract 2 paragraphs from 5, that gives you 3 paragraphs that you're going to use for your body. And typically what you do in the body of an essay is you make main points. In the intro, you're going to make a thesis statement. In the case of this essay, it's going to be what life was like in World War I, and then you're going to back it up with these 3 main points. So if you said that life was awful, you're going to talk about all the mud and rats in the everyday life in the trenches, how bad that is. You're going to talk about how many friends you lost in whatever battle you fought. And then you're going to talk about the awful new technology used in the war, gas and machine guns, and how quickly people died. Those are going to be your 3 main points. And do you see how they kind of back up that idea that war is bad? So the thing to remember in an essay is, remember, you need to break it into pieces. You need to break it into an intro, a body, and conclusion. If you don't have that, you don't actually have an essay. And then because that body is so long, it gets broken up into further pieces, which are usually referred to as main points, sometimes also as body paragraphs. So let's go a little further, and now let's take this and tie it to our particular essay. This is something I like to call an essay map. Now again, I'm going to tell you something. I've been grading essays for 16 years. I've been teaching essays for 16 years. And for many years, I used to have to teach AP students how to write essays very, very quickly. And one of the things I learned is if you have a few words for each paragraph, if you know what you're going to write for each paragraph and you just make a quick note of it, it will cut the amount of time that it takes you to do an essay in half to a quarter. It really frees you up and allows you to go quickly. And I came to learn over time that it's worthwhile to take a few minutes to break down your essay into what I call an essay map. Write down intro, conclusion, and then name your main points. If you have 3 main points, name the 3 main points, because that is going to cause you to write quickly. So in this particular essay, we have to write what life was like for a soldier in World War I. We have to talk about everyday conditions of life, which is, basically the reality of what it was like to live in trenches 24 hours a day under fire. We need to talk about a specific battle. There were many, many battles fought in World War I, and many battles, like the Battle of the Somme in particular. 2 million casualties. 10,000 men an hour were killed in that battle for like 2 months in a row. It was crazy. So that's a good battle to talk about. Interestingly enough, the Battle of the Somme, the author J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings, fought on one side of that battle, and Adolf Hitler fought on the other. And so that was one of the big battles in World War I, but it certainly wasn't the only one. There were so many, and they were so awful. And also you have to talk about technology used in war, because so much was used. Now, again, here's the thing. If we have to, in a 5-paragraph essay, 1 paragraph is the intro, 1 is the conclusion, which means that in a 5-paragraph essay, you're going to have 3 main points. If we have to talk about 3 things, everyday conditions, specific battle, technology, and war, doesn't it make sense to use those as our main points? So when you look here, we've got an intro paragraph, and then my first body paragraph, I'm going to be talking about the everyday conditions of for in the trenches in World War I, and my second body paragraph, I'm going to be talking about the specific battle, and my last one, I'm going to be talking about the conclusion, or the technology, and then I'm going to come up with the conclusion. That's the essay map for this essay. Sometimes when you're given a topic, it's very obvious what the main points will be, like in this one, because they're basically mandating that you talk about these 3 things. Other times it's a little harder, but we won't talk about other times until later. For right now, this one's a super easy essay because our main points are given to us. Now, let's talk about a little more detail on the intro and the conclusion. When you write out an introduction to an essay, it has to do 2 things. It has to introduce your readers to the topic: who, what, where, and when, and then it has to provide the thesis statement or answer the topic question. So in this particular essay, because it's a letter home from your family, you're going to begin your intro with "Dear Mom and Dad," or "Dear Greta, my sister," or whoever. Address this to somebody in your family. And then this is an essay about life on the front in World War I. So the best place to begin is introduce World War I. Talk about, when it was happening and how many people were involved, or how you got involved in World War I as a fictional soldier. It's been 7 months since I was marched off to the front when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was killed. They told us we were fighting for the fatherland, but I tell you what, I've seen millions of people die at this point, and we're not. And then at the end of the intro, you need to come up with that thesis. I tell you, friends, they said that this was going to be the Great War and that God wanted us to do this, but I will tell you, after being here for a year, life on the front is horrible, horrible, horrible. There's your thesis statement. So again, what happens in the intro is you introduce your topic, which generally is World War I, and then you come down to that thesis where you talk about what your life was like in World War I. Now, when you get to the conclusion, you need to come back to that and remind your readers about the topic. Don't forget, this is a thing about World War I. I sure hope I survived this war. This has been the worst war ever. And then you come back to your thesis. Now, again, what makes this mildly tricky as an essay, and again, I think this is an easy essay, is because this is a letter home to your family, your intro and conclusion will also have to serve as the salutation and farewell in your letter. So again, your intro begins with Dear Mom and Dad. Now, World War I essay body paragraph detail. Remember that this entire essay is what life for the soldier in World War I was like. The body paragraphs need to answer that question, but what they do is they answer it in a specific way. So take a look at these 3 sentences that I have here. They're all questions and they're all similar, except that they are topic-specific versions of the first question up there. What were the everyday conditions at the front like? That is part of life for a soldier, right? And that's also what you need to be talking about in that body paragraph. What was your specific battle like? If a soldier is fighting, they're going to fight in battle, so that too is part of their life. And then what new kind of technology did you see used in this war? If you're fighting in war, you're going to see technology used to kill people. And in World War I in particular, there was a lot of new technology that had been developed. That is part of life for a soldier. So all 3 of those questions really address the one question, what was life like? But they do it in a topic-specific way. And one way to look at your body paragraphs is you have 6 to 8 sentences to answer each of these questions. So let's move on to the next slide. Each body paragraph must address the topic question and must be 6 to 8 sentences long. You should count when you do an essay, and you want to make sure that you don't have like one shrimpy body paragraph in the middle of 2 bigger ones. You basically want to make all of your body paragraphs about 6 to 8 sentences long. Let's just choose the number 7 for right here. And again, all of them have to, in their specific way, address that question, what was life like for a soldier? By the way, here's a good question. Do you include the questions in your essay? No, you don't. Your essay answers the questions. So you could say at the beginning of your everyday conditions, life for me in the trenches is an endless world of mud, rats, and artillery shells going off. That answers the question, what was everyday life like? And then what you're going to do is you're going to spend the next 6 sentences after that expanding on what you said. Now, for the body paragraph, each of them must do 2 things. Now, I want you to remember 7 sentences for a body paragraph. Start off with a 1-sentence answer, and then you need to do 2 things. 1, identify and describe your topic. If you are looking up life in the trenches, the everyday life, and you click on that link, it's going to talk about rats, it's going to talk about mud, it's going to talk about boredom, it's going to talk about shell shock, because people couldn't live under conditions where they were being shelled every day, day and night, artillery shells. You never knew when that one artillery shell was going to hit your section of the trench and blow you and your buddies to pieces. That actually made people crazy, and they called it shell shock because people would break down under that. So it's going to talk about all these different things, and you know what you're going to find? It is going to be so easy to fill up a paragraph with detail here. What needs to guide you as you look at that Wikipedia article is who, what, where, and when. This becomes even more important in your battle body paragraph. You need to identify the name of the battle. You need to talk about where it was fought, who fought in it, maybe how many people died. You want to identify those kind of things. And then, because this is a letter, you must react to this topic. How would experiencing these things make you feel? Now, this is an important thing to understand in an essay. There's a place for a Wikipedia, and there's also a place for you. An essay is no good if it's only information that was pulled from articles and pasted in and all of this. It's also no good if there's no information. What you have to do is you have to add information, and then you need to explain that information or discuss it. Now remember, we said 7 sentences? If I have to do 2 things and my first sentence addresses the question, that leaves me with 6 sentences to do 2 things. In 3 sentences, bring in the Wikipedia stuff. Talk about the who, what, where, and when. Whether it's conditions in battle, new technology, whatever. That's the kind of stuff that comes from Wikipedia. You paraphrase what you see there. 3 sentences. Then what you need to do is, after you've done that, then the next 3 sentences, you need to just look at what you just put down and say to yourself, how would this make me feel? If I was experiencing, if I just saw all my buddies killed by a machine gun, if I just saw 100 men mowed down by a machine gun in 2 seconds flat, how would I feel afterwards? That would be kind of emotional. That would be kind of scary. That would be kind of, oh my gosh, and that's what you need to write, because remember, you're writing a letter home to your parents. And what you need to do in that making me feel thing is you need to agree with your general thesis statement. So you needed to decide whether you thought World War I was good or bad. So if you felt it was bad, you're going to want to talk about all the negativity of these things. But a good half of each body paragraph needs to come from your brain. And and actually it's fairly easy. There's no right or wrong, there's just logical and illogical. You cannot say, yeah, I watched 100 of my buddies mowed down by a machine gun in 2 seconds, and man, let me tell you, Mom, that was the coolest thing ever. You should have seen. It was like The Walking Dead, but for real. I mean, that was awesome. You can't be doing that. Not if you call them your friends. Maybe if you said the enemy. Oh man, you should have seen the enemy was coming at us and we just wrapped them down with the machine gun. Awesome. I blew one dude's head clean off his shoulders. That's different. But you need to make it logical, and it needs to kind of agree with your general thesis statement. So that being said, what you do is you start on each of these body paragraphs and you say, got to identify who, what, where, and when. Got to answer that question. What was it like? I've got to explain how I'm feeling. And before you know it, you're going to go, wow, I got like 8 sentences there. That was awesome. And you're going to move on to the next one. So that is how you do these 3 things. Or move on to this final slide. I told you I'd make this quick. You are now ready to go. Don't forget your essay map. If you're watching this, pause it and take a note. If I can attach this somewhere, I will, so you can download the PowerPoint so you've got these. But I think this is pretty simple stuff. 5 paragraphs. A good 5-paragraph essay is around 600 words. I'll mark you down once I start seeing it drops below 500. I'll mark you up when I see it goes above 600. So that's something to think of. If you feel like you need any more help from me, feel free to email me or call me. All my phone numbers and contact information is all over the course announcements. I am happy to work with you one-on-one, but hopefully watching this video you feel like, yeah, I can do it. So good luck, and I'm looking forward to grading your essays.